Thank you so much, ma'am, because when we look at data in the public domain, I'm not sure if we really focus on this denominational change that you've talked about, from rescheduling to, from restructuring to rescheduling, but this definitely needs a look at. And also in the recommendations that we have given about transparency, the points that you have mentioned, especially not really knowing the details of the banks or the borrowers, but a set of parameters which can help us to gauge the extent of misgovernance, as you've called this. But we were beginning to worry about project finance as one of the most recent forms of instruments of financing, where probably something where you have a coalition of banks coming in and retire the bad loans or the bad debts of one bank without staining the book of that bank to get in another bank to lend it further. So that's quite technically put, but I think this is the whole concept where we talk about evergreening. Now, when we are talking about restructuring and rescheduling, I really wonder if evergreening needs to be relooked at as well, because evergreening, in a very simplistic manner, would rather mean that we talk more about the complicity between the government, the banks, and the borrowers. But I'm actually hinting towards Dr. Mohan Guruswamy, who has been talking about the issue of evergreening. So, sir, where do you exactly see evergreening as a denominational differentiator within this, what ma'am has talked about, the definitional changes?
Tasked by my minister to work on restructuring the loans for a large corporate. And after having studied, done an MBA and then studied economics, I put on my skills to work and I sat down to restructure the business, which was a conglomerate. And I said, the following divisions have to be sold, the following divisions have to be merged into something else, and the following companies have to get new management. And only then should the banks consider some additional loan. So the businessman concerned protested to the higher-ups that I was very negative and hostile. And he said, I've gone to them for restructuring and he's proposing to break up my company. And so the minister called me and said, what's happening? So how did you manage to upset this fellow? So I said, sir, you have to restructure the company because, he's not eligible for more loans. The lending norms will all be breached. The sectoral norms are already breached because we've given the steel industry too much of money. And putting more money there is, putting good money after a bad cause. So he said, no, be careful because this man, sitting in North Block, he pointed to South Block, saying this man's got to reach up in South Block. And lo and behold, 2 hours later, I got a call on the racks from a very senior official in the PMO saying that, look, what are you doing? This man is in the Prime Minister's Council of Economic Advisors and you're getting ready to shut him down. So, the restructuring never took place. He got more loans. And, I'm glad to see that, he figures among the top in this list today, which has been announced. And that's why I come to the systemic issues. What is wrong with the system? The system is who owns the banks? The government owns the banks. Whose money is it? It's our money. The government is only a facilitator to see that our money is invested diligently and usefully. It's not the government's money. They're lending our money. Who regulates the bank? The RBI. Who appoints the RBI governor? The government. Who appoints the RBI directors? The government. So effectively what you've got is a systemic dissonance where the regulator is controlled by the government and the banks are run by the government. And I know how the banks are run because there is a Department of Banking which sits close by here at Patel Chowk. And the Department of Banking effectively disburses loans and makes appointments. The whip the government has is controlling appointments. General managers, executive directors, managing directors and chairmen are all appointed by the government. Executive directors and above, the appointment order has to be signed by the Prime Minister. And let me tell you with full knowledge and full confidence, no appointment takes place without due consideration. And this is where the system goes wrong. The manager or the director who wants to become chairman of a large bank normally doesn't have the kind of tribute he is expected to pay. So he gets hold of a business tycoon or a couple of them, and they pool together and they put the money up for him, and hopefully they will recover that money when he is in his office for 3 years or whatever. Exactly what happens. Companies after companies sponsor managing directors, executive directors, and chairmen. So, this is quite open. Those of us who've been in government, those who've been near government, we know how this functions. But this is a secret which nobody talks about. Parliament doesn't talk about it, media doesn't talk about it, because this whole system is interwoven here. Now, typically what happens is when a company applies for a loan or for a new project, typically they would go to the banks, to the lead bank, maybe State Bank of India, and say, look, I want a loan. So State Bank will say, we'll get the Bankers Club together, which is an unofficial body which exists in Bombay, where the chairman of banks, of the nationalized banks, which are 84% of the banking system, will meet once a week and decide who will, the term used is "Kaun kitna khayega," who is going to eat how much of the loan. That's the exact term which they use. And they decide, okay, now, Vijaya Bank, you're a little weak, so you get away with 500 crores. But SBI has got lots of money, 5,000 crores. So this is how they distribute the loan. And projects are never evaluated for their true worth. If you look at projects, all projects in India are gold-plated. Gold-plating means that, if you're building a fertilizer plant, you estimate that cost of the fertilizer plant as if it was made of gold or plated with gold. So costs are hugely inflated. Then the kickback comes to the promoter, so-called promoter, and in real sense of the word, he's a promoter. He's promoted this huge con. And then that money is distributed in the political system, the banking system, the bureaucracy. Everybody goes home quite happy. This is how the system works. But system will go on working as long as you keep printing notes. And you keep printing notes, you can go on happily. Once in a while, you will get a man like Raghuram Rajan who will come and blow the whistle and say, look, this don't conform to international norms, this don't conform to Basel norms, you've got to dress up your books, you've got to clean up your system, you've got to clean up your loans, you've got to start collecting your loans. And that's when the system gets really upset. What's happened in the last 2 years is that the NPAs suddenly shot up. From when this government came into office, NPAs were somewhere like 2 lakh crores. And as last count, which I know of, it was 7.83 lakh crores. It doesn't mean that this government lent a lot of money. It meant that the books are being set right. And the RBI governor is forcing them to set right books and asking them, and what does an NPA mean? An NPA means a loan on which you're not collecting interest. Banks are in the business of lending money. You lend money for interest, and with that interest you have banks earn money. But if the loan is not being serviced, that means the interest is not being paid, that means that loan is turned and NPA becomes a loss to the system. Now this 7.83 lakh crores are NPAs. That means they don't even earn interest. Forget about failures, forget about fraud. Even if there was fraud involved, as long as the loans were being serviced, banks would be quite happy. And we are paying for this as citizens with the most expensive banking system in the world. Normal deposits, we will get 6 to 7% as interest. And banks lend at 14, 15%. Nowhere in the world, this difference is called a spread. Nowhere in the world you get a spread like this. You know, banks can earn as much money as they want because they are lending, giving bad loans. So they have to earn more money, and there are lots of other practices in banks. Staff practices, managerial practices, which all lend to the general inefficiency. Now, so we know one thing: when a company comes to you for a loan, for a restructure, suddenly you say that you need restructuring. The company will come for a restructure. Basically, it means give me more money. And government will sanction a restructure. And mind you, all restructure loans, big restructuring is sanctioned by the finance ministry. Be under no illusions that the banks have taken an independent decision, that the banks have decided that this company needs help. The loans are sanctioned, approved verbally by the Ministry of Finance. Depending on the size of the loan, the higher the level. So, this is how banks function, and this is what's wrong with the system. Government is fully in control of the bank, and nobody wants to change it. UPA to NDA is a seamless transfer. It's the same system which continues. Now, I was at the inauguration of the opening of the new terminal in Bombay, the air terminal. And I was sitting in the audience and I was looking at the galaxy of people on the dais. The Prime Minister was the chief guest, the Finance Minister was there, the RBI Governor was there, State Bank Chairman was there, chairmen of 5 banks with the consortium lenders were there, the promoter was there, and everybody was congratulating him. And here I thought to myself that this fellow has got 23,000 crores of NPAs. And the Prime Minister of India is endorsing him. And he's shown the entire banking system and the financial system. The Prime Minister of India is with me. So who is going to collect from him? Bank managers, particularly the higher up you go, are terrified people. They're scared of their own shadows. They're constantly asking you, is it okay if I give this loan? Will there be objections from the rival group? How is the rival group placed in your ministry? So bank managers do not lend money till they are given a very clear go from the front. And if you're in government, it's very difficult to say no. All kinds of pressures are born. Prime Minister's son-in-law, somebody's daughter-in-law. They're all involved in this thing. And suddenly, you find that all the time you're fighting off pressures. So this is one kind of fraud which takes place. It's clear out and out fraud. The other kind of fraud is investment in companies. Now, most of the big companies in India are owned by the public financial institutions, LIC, State Bank, UTI, all these. So you get them to subscribe the shares. Then you get them to ramp up the shares. So a 10 rupee share in a year from now is trading at 120 rupees. So at 120 rupees, the promoter will offload it, collect 110 rupees per share as his profit, and then bring the money in for new projects. So this is another kind of fraud which takes place, in which the government is involved. The other fraud is that last year, Transparency International said that $83 billion left India as illicit exports of finance. $83 billion. And in the last 10 years, $461 billion have left India as money going. This is money which they could calculate. Now, I once was talking to an industrialist who came for a restructure, and I said, how much money do you have abroad? Why don't we get some money back? So he said, guess. And this is, taking place in an office, a government office. An officer of the rank of secretary is listening to this. And so I said, 100 million? He said, what? You're insulting me. He said, I've got 15 times that. And if I want to bring my money back, I'll bring it back anytime. But why should I bring it back when you got banks? So if you take any big industrial house today, most of them are invested abroad. Tatas today are bigger abroad than in India. SRs are bigger abroad than in India. Anil Ambani, I don't know where he is. He's 123 lakh, 1.23 lakh crores NPA. But today he has announced the promotion of a housing finance company of 20,000 crores. So there's no end to these guys. Till the government decides, or the government cannot decide because the government is beholden to them. Who paid for the last elections? In last elections, each of the political parties, the big parties, spent about 20,000 crores each. Prime Minister Modi addressed 600 public meetings. Each meeting cost 10 crores. So 6,000 crores only in his meetings. Whose corporate jet did he fly in? Whose corporate jet did Rahul Gandhi fly in? So all these guys are there when the delegation goes abroad. They are with the Prime Minister. Prime Minister says, isko $5 billion de do, usko $10 billion de do. And money is given this way. And unless we can set right the system of deregulating the banks, putting them under the control of the RBI, delinking the banks from the government. Now, why should the chairman of State Bank be put in a hierarchy with the government? The chairman of the State Bank was only a special secretary to government. And so when he comes to call on the secretary, he has to wait. The chit will go in first saying that, and here is a man who controls, 3-4 lakh crores in public finances. There is no status in the country. Chairman of LIC has no status. Chairman of UTI has no status. So these guys are all constantly beholden. They're running around, hoping that, they'll get one more six-month term. When you get a good RBI governor, he blows the whistle, so you quickly run him out. You give him a 3-year term and say, no more extension, now you go. But who's going to bell the cat? Who's going to speak in Parliament? Is the Congress party going to speak? Is the BJP going to speak? Now we're caught in a system where we really have to get out of this monolithic control of banks by the state. But the unions will object. My friend Chandru will object. Everybody will object. We are stuck in a bad situation. You got to get the banks out of government. And only then you can save our banking system. And you don't have to be controlled by private groups. You can have largely dispersed public groups, socially managed, socially controlled, with clear objectives, with RBI functioning as a regulator. But government should get out of the business of banking. And only then you can save the system. Thank you very much.
A couple of words that you used quite often in your talk were system and systematic and systemic. I think that brings us to the main issue, which is about transparency and accountability. You've kind of actually unfolded the prevalent notions of corruption, fraud, questioning our honesty and integrity, and obviously also questioning the honesty and integrity of the policy makers to whom we are subjected. I think that's where Nikhil Dev would chip in when he talks about how exactly can we talk of transparency, accountability in times when civil sector is increasingly docked in the corner. So, Nikhil Dev.
Thank you very much to the Public Finance and Public Accountability Collective for holding this particular meeting. I am certainly the least qualified of anyone on this panel, but since you have started an initiative where you want people and whatever that term may mean, civil society, to come forward to look at what is happening with major issues in this country, and public finance being one of them, I will try and, to the extent possible, bring that voice of common sense, not from myself, but from voices that I've heard over a period of time, to what is considered this very elite, within finance is very elite part of finance but affects us all. It's very interesting. You had a line in your report which says, hypocrisy occupies a space between language and action. I think there can't be any more hypocritical term than non-performing asset. I mean, if it's non-performing, how is it an asset? And that's the biggest thing, that we need to just understand the straightforward nature of what we are talking about. It's really like the Achhe Din of this government and the Fly the Good Times of Kingfisher. They are both on the same plane. And it is that same kind of miasma that they try and lead us towards. While we know, we watch that aircraft fly and we know that it's drowning public finance. We watch this government call Achhe Din while it's getting votes and carrying on, and we know that money is being drowned. And the same language which calls MGNREG a dole, and it says these so-called dole entitlements must stop, that education and health budgets must be cut, and that we can give and dole out to the corporate sector the way that we do in this country is beyond understanding of ordinary people. It must be the understanding of experts. It must be the understanding of people who sit in banks. It must be the understanding of economists. But it is beyond my understanding after having listened very carefully to people and watched people on the ground. So I think if we look at language and straightforward language, when we started the Right to Information movement, when people were asking for muster roll ki सूचना or ration card ki सूचना, unka nara kya tha which defined right to information and got us, I think defined the law finally as we managed to get it, was hamara paisa, hamara hisab. Our money, our accounts. That's what these assets are, that's what this money is, that's what public finance is, if we look at it properly. It is hamara paisa, it is hamara hisab. It's straightforward, it's as simple as that. And therefore, another nara which actually affects us even more in this country, which came at the same time in the early 90s, was hum janenge, hum jiyenge. The right to know, the right to live. When somebody takes away 9,000 crores and somebody else doesn't get their 500 rupee pension and dies because of that, and yes, there are hundreds and thousands dying because of the lack of either an ICDS running properly, or the lack of a ration shop running properly, or the lack of some particular kind of program that's meant to help a farming community in distress, or elderly people who have nothing else to turn to because they have contributed during their lives. That is literally killing people, and killing people by hiding information to begin with. So I don't think there can be a dispute or a debate, and if anyone hides that information, I don't understand this whole business even after the right to information of how people can say no, financial matters are private matters. Why should income tax returns not be in public domain? That is income that's being stolen from people, because we have a structure which says that income tax will come according to what your income is. If you're hiding that income, how the hell can people figure out what you're supposed to be paying? How can you figure out what's being done with public money through the loans? How can you figure out what's being done when you are changing your whole budgetary processes are being done to decide what you will consider that, okay, this is a tax rebate or not? Why can't we have public debates on all these matters? And therefore, this is one very important part of it, but there are parts of this that need to be put together to arrive at that larger picture of what we are doing with big money. We often say that there is grand corruption and petty corruption. There is also grand corruption in grand finance. And it is in the nature, it is drawn into the DNA of that particular finance, the way it's structured, where it is called some great thing, people sitting over drinks and dinner and deciding what loan. That will be done, and the other farmers who have to do it in public domain, every single pie known, everything debated, every single pie taken, as Yogenji is saying, on the walls. Certainly take everyone's on the walls, but put everyone on the wall. deal with everyone in the same fashion, and everyone taking a loan has at the very least the right to be treated with some degree of equality, at the very least. So if we move towards an accountability, again there's a discussion. I think this is the greatest thing, is that it's slim, but it's full of a lot of important information. We all need to delve into it more. And it does debate this issue of accountability, which is a difficult one. It is a political issue, I agree. But there's Hindi में फिर से सीधा साधा है जवाबदेही. तो एक जवाबदेही है, आप जो कर रहे हो उसके लिए जवाबदेही है. जवाब दो. हमने अभी एक धरना दिया, एक जवाबदेही कानून मांगा, उसका जवाब तो दो. जो कर रहे हो उसका जवाब दो. सवाल हैं उनके जवाब तो दो. Somewhere there you have to be, you're drawing a salary, you're sitting as a manager, you're sitting on public finance, even if it's private banks, you're sitting on public finance. You have to give answers for that. You're supposed to give to your stakeholders, you're supposed to give to your shareholders. Here we are, all of us in this country, in some form or the other. So I think that is something that's extremely important. We say proactive disclosure, even in the RTI Act, we say proactive disclosure. I think we need to, in this area, with all the experts who we have on this platform and others, and even those who are critical of us, we need to sit and have a debate about what is the mandatory disclosure. It's not proactive, it is mandatory. We mandate that these are the things that you must put into the public domain. Automatically you must put into the public domain. We need actually a policy of disclosure, and I think this kind of forum needs to come out with it, for all financial transactions. And that in the RTI debate will be of great use, when not just people like us who are considered Sadak Chhap activists, but everyone else says that actually for financial matters, everything should be in the public domain, because it all concerns the people. Somewhere, in some form, it concerns the people. And if everyone were to say that and lend voice to it, information commissions and even the Supreme Court will then finally have to rule differently on what comes within the RTI domain or not. In addition to the guidelines that you have mentioned here on revisioning transparency and disclosures, I think what we need is an end-to-end, what are normally called management information systems, I'd say a Janta information system. Because again, finance concerns us all. An end-to-end from the time when someone asks for a loan to be put on that particular information, public domain information system, to what terms they asked for, how much they're asking for, why they're asking for it, whether they think they will get their permission in a realistic time frame or not, what is the kind of promises that they have made, because it's all connected in terms of pollution, in terms of land, whose land they're going to take over. People need to know. They don't need to know just under the pollution control structure, they need to know here as well. And it all needs to be connected with one another, because again, those are all issues deeply contentious, and who more than at least the people who are affected, who should know, and everyone else should know. So we need that, and from the entire process, from asking for a loan to see who actually was given amongst the many who asked, how and what terms they were given, what was particularly negotiated, right till the time they return fully that loan, so that they are considered a good borrower or whatever else the term is within this structure. We need, today we are talking about zero balance, we also need a negative balance account. Starting with the biggest borrower who's on a negative side, ending with the people who Yogenji talked about, who are the tiny little borrowers. We need them on one list. And we don't need 6,000, we need actually all, so that we'll see how the top 6,000 overshadow the lakhs who are at the bottom of that list. And it is only fair in terms, yes, certainly take money back from whoever borrows, but take money back first from those who borrow most. And otherwise you have no business to get after those who are at the bottom of that list, especially those who are suffering from all kinds of much greater distress than when we say that, oh, what Indira ji talked about, that they have a problem that they didn't get clearances. Farmers didn't get clearances from God. Barsat hi nahi aayi, kya karenge wo? How will they return those particular things? So what exactly is going to be done in those terms? And therefore we also need to create an MIS for restructuring, a Janta information system for restructuring. Whose loans did you restructure? How much did you restructure? Which did you reschedule? Not just restructuring. Yogenji has been standing up in court not saying restructuring, he's been saying reschedule to kar do. इस साल में मत करो. He's been begging, they've been begging not for restructuring, not for waiving, but for rescheduling. And even that is not being done. And yet these other people will get away with rescheduling not being something that is a crisis. How can we have these double standards that exist? We need to have within that whole information system a public debate for what that information system will contain, what its structure will be, what its code will be, what its design will be. Because these days we are only into digital formats. Those digital formats, some 3 people again sit in a room and turn out something into something quite different. We need now to understand that we have to get into that. There is that term that design is architecture and code is law. We make something and someone else turns it into something quite different. So we need to be in those designs right through. And we need the assets and liabilities of companies put up. दारू बेच के तो मैं पैसे कमा सकता हूँ और हवाई जहाज लेके मैं उड़ जाऊंगा. How can we say that we don't consider those same people, that they have these strange ways of being able to do accounting? And therefore, finally, when we come to accountability, we need to understand, we need to make these connections between accounts and accountability. It's not just accounts in little slots and little pigeonholes, it's their connection all over. And the accountability comes from beyond money into what happens to human beings at the other end, because that's where finance affects all of us. So I want to very quickly go through just the accountability things. I would like to propose and suggest that as a second step, we should all say and announce that we will have a national Jan Sunwai public hearing on these so-called non-performing assets. I can certainly say from NCPRI's side, we would be very happy to partner and be a part of this as a right to information campaign. I'm sure many groups can come together, and it needs expertise. It needs people who are from people's groups. It needs people of other kinds. It needs to have that we are doing this on the basis of information, accounts, evidence. It needs the expertise of people who are within the banking system, who are those who watch the banking system all the time and write about it, and those who suffer the other end of the banking system as well, and their voice is as important. We need to look at a cost-benefit analysis also on that same matrix, that when you are not paying someone and not giving them 100 days of work under MGNREGA, what you are costing that family. When you are not paying a pension for months, what you are costing that family. And when you are giving someone 1,000 crores off or 10,000 crores off, what you are actually costing in human lives. It needs to be on the same matrix. When you are cutting an ICDS budget, what you are costing. When you are saying you don't have enough money for your budgetary things, what you are costing. Otherwise, it's not good enough. So NREGA, education, health, ICDS, all cut in the last few years. All cut while we have a growth rate. All cut while we are dishing out money to corporates. All cut when you are saying, okay, you can restructure and you can call non-performing. They should all be in jail. What is the possible domain by which they can carry on like this? We need a grievance redress authority, but actually I think we need a regular public audit system. Not just a one-time Jan Sunwai, but we need to put in place that every 6 months and every year we will do, government is required, like in NREGA, government is required once a year to do a social audit, actually once in 6 months. Government is required where they will not do it, they'll just provide information. RBI will make sure information is provided, groups of experts will come, anyone can testify, anyone is free to speak. These are all the norms of public audit that are being made. Why can't we apply it to banking? We'll apply all the technicalities of that to NREGA and food security and not to banking, which affects us all so much more. So we need that public audit system, which will look at rescheduling, which will look at restructuring, which will look at all the other SOPs that these people have. When we started, and I'll end now, when we started our whole right to information journey, we had got tired of over and over again going in agitation, and some people came up with this idea कि सारे जो हिसाब किताब है उसको पब्लिक डोमेन में रख के गांव के बीच में माइक पर बोल के वीडियो के सामने लोग बोलेंगे कि ये काम हुआ या नहीं हुआ, ये व्यक्ति काम पे गया या नहीं गया, ये सीमेंट का बैग आया या नहीं आया. And the day that it was put in public domain and put in front of the public, there was a chemical reaction. Information in the public domain has that kind of chemical reaction. It can really produce change. We are a handful of us. If we provide solid information, we will really shake things up much more than otherwise we'll be crying for years and years and they'll still be running away with the money. So we need to do that, and when we started the social audit, we realized very quickly and we came up with 4 things. We said to do a public audit, you need, number 1, information, complete access to all information. Number 2, you need those people, those officials present there. They are required, they should be required by law to be present to answer. We don't want a one-sided thing. In a public, we don't want a lynching or hanging. We just want them to answer. Why did they do something particular? Let them defend themselves. But we want them there in that democratic platform. Number 3, we want grievance redress, and this is where grievance redress is recovery, but also a grievance redress system that means where should this money actually go, where it means that we reform so that the wrong people don't get it and somewhere the system improves over a period of time. And finally, we need the institutionalizing of this understanding that everyone, every citizen has a right to ask and get answers, and a structure by which that can be done. The most anadi, the most गांव से बिना पढ़ा लिखा उन्हीं लोगों में दम है, उन्हीं लोगों ने ये नारे लगाए. और उनका लास्ट नारा जब पहले था हमारा पैसा हमारा हिसाब, फिर वो नारा बना ये पैसे हमारे आपके नहीं किसी के बाप के, और फिर नारा बना ये देश हमारे आपका नहीं किसी के बाप का. तो ये योगेंद्र जी ने सही कहा, ये केवल पैसे का सवाल नहीं है, ये देश का सवाल है, और पूरी लड़ाई इस देश में पैसों की है. सच बात तो ये.
Just one last thing I would like to reiterate here is we are looking at transparency and accountability in the document in a pretty distinct manner, because there is a tendency to overlap one with the other. We are not really doing that. So the difference is akin to what we would say as accountability more affine towards governance, whereas transparency is more affine towards the governmentality or the government structures.